All right, everyone. Hello, and thank you for coming to the June edition of ServeNowEDU. I'm Trent Carlisle, co-founder of ServeNow, and today's topic is going to be ethics in process serving. Our guest today is Kimberly Hamilton, president of the North Carolina Association of Professional Servers, also known as NCAPPS, whom I'll introduce momentarily, but I first wanted to cover a couple things before we get started on today's topic. These webinars are recorded, so you can watch this one and past ServeNowEDUs on ServeNow.com or YouTube. You can also subscribe to them as a video podcast on iTunes. I want to talk about a couple webinars we have coming up this summer. There's a two-part series that we're really excited to bring you that will cover social media investigations. Joseph Jones from Bosco Legal Services is scheduled in July, and he'll talk about social media skip tracing, everything the modern process server needs to know. In August, J.J. Gilborn, investigator with the Lawrence County, Missouri Sheriff's Office, is going to talk about computer investigations and the use of social media. So if you're interested in providing this service, learning more about it, or utilizing social media for skip tracing, people locates, etc., make sure you go to ServeNow.com. Click on ServeNowEDU and register for those two webinars. If nothing else, it's a pretty interesting topic. So as I mentioned earlier, our guest today is Kimberly Hamilton. She's been extremely active in both the private investigative and service process professions since 2000. Kimberly is the current president and a founding member of the North Carolina Association of Professional Process Servers. She has previously served on the board for the North Carolina Association of Private Investigators. She's a former deputy with the Alamance County Sheriff's Department. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. And currently teaches classes on process serving, human trafficking, as well as ethics, which she'll be talking about today. Kimberly is also the owner of Female Agents, Inc., a process serving and private investigations firm covering the entire state of North Carolina. So if you have work out that way, you can look her up on ServeNow, or you can visit femaleagentinvestigations.com. Welcome, Kimberly, and thank you so much for generously donating your time to us and our audience today.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here today and appreciate this opportunity to do this webinar. I want to start by saying that I really enjoy the ServeNow webinars and the different topics they provide each month. I think this is a great way for process servers to get education. And you guys at ServeNow are doing a great job. So thank you for all that. Awesome. I do teach an ethics class, and I do this because I like to think, and I like to get people to think. I love for them to see a different point of view and to explore new ideas that they may not have considered before. I think ethics, either personal or business, makes you think about doing the right thing. And sometimes that's easy, and sometimes that's more difficult. So that's why I teach ethics, and I really enjoy it.
Cool. We're going to jump in here at a pretty high level, but first I wanted to let everyone know that if you do have questions along the way, we have all the audio off, but you can ask questions via the GoToWebinar panel that should be on your screen. There's a questions section there that I will be monitoring, and I will try to get to most of those. If not, we will definitely give you Kimberly's contact information at the end that you can either shoot her an email or give her a call if you have questions. So, all right. So, like I said, we're going to get started at a high level here, then get into ethics specific to process serving. So, Kimberly, what is a good definition of ethics? And when we refer to business ethics, what are we generally talking about, and why are they important to business?
I'm willing to bet that most of us have attended ethics classes that have lasted for hours on the history and the philosophy and the definition of ethics. And you probably don't want to sit through those again. I think basically ethics can be short and sweet, and it's good versus bad, right versus wrong, vice versus virtue. And when you're thinking of ethical decisions, think about what good is going to come from this and what harm it is going to have, and who's going to benefit, and who will have a negative impact with it. If you keep these things in mind when faced with a dilemma, I think you're guiding yourself to making the best possible and hopefully your easier decision, either personally or with your business. I think with having high standards of ethics and good practices is very, very crucial to a business. And why? I think, for one, it helps attract new clients. When you are trying to attract new clients, you think of the keywords with advertising that you look for most, and most of those are linked to ethical behavior. You look at business and company websites, you see the words like professional, trustworthy, dependable, accountable, honest, reliable, great customer service. Those are all words related to ethics and used very, very often in marketing. They instill the idea that this company is the one that you should hire. So you want to, when you're trying to get those new clients, having good ethics from the beginning is a definite must. Another reason for it being would be referrals. You also want to get referrals from those new customers, and referrals are very crucial to the success of a business. And they may come from other process serving companies, attorneys, any type of clients. And it's the same thing. You want them to use your services. Client loyalty, which is basically making that new client into a regular client. All that hard work you did in gaining that new client and all that marketing you did, you want to keep them around, and that work should not be wasted. High ethical standards also reduces backlash, of negative backlash, and doing the wrong thing. It prevents a company from having a bad reputation. We all probably can think of one or two process serving companies that have a bad reputation. Do you want to be that company? Do you want to have a reputation like that? Another reason would be setting the standards for employees. We hire people to work in your office or, to serve papers for you. You need to be very clear on your ethical standards and what you believe are best practices, because they are a direct reflection on your company. And I can't tell you how many times I've called a company and spoken with somebody who was very rude on the phone or didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And I don't remember that person's name. I don't remember them individually, but I do remember that company's name. So remember that your employees are a direct reflection of you and your company. Clients want and need to know that the companies they hire know the good from the bad, and that they will do the right things, and they will get the job done professionally and legally, and that you're not going to make them look bad for hiring you.
Right. So we're definitely going to get into decision making and some of the guiding principles of ethics a little bit later on the webinar. But just hearing you talk about ethics, when being guided by doing the right thing, not doing harm, it almost feels like it makes it easier to run and grow your business, or at least there's an entire set of options that don't need to be considered when being ethical is a primary motivator. Is that something that you would agree with?
Oh, most certainly. We have enough to worry about with running the business and serving the papers and doing all that and getting the job done. And having a strong set of values and ethical practices will save you lots of time and headaches down the road. And with doing the right thing from the beginning, you are freeing yourself and your company of making poor decisions that can be very harmful to you and dangerous to your company and everybody that you work for.
So given the context of your job, it seems obvious that process servers should be held to higher than normal standards when it comes to ethics. But do you mind talking about the reasons why for a moment? Why should our audience prioritize ethical practices as a process serving company?
We as process servers are serving legal documents, summonses and complaints and subpoenas and all that kind of stuff to individuals involved in one way or another in a lawsuit. And being involved in a lawsuit on any level is not usually a welcome or pleasant experience. We are delivering documents, personal documents related to personal issues, financial matters, family situations, such as child support, divorces, estate issues, and to people who are trying to run for something for whatever reason. Process serving is an industry that practicing higher ethical standards is a must. Dealing with other people's business is not an area that can be compromised or jeopardized due to lack of professionalism or respect or honesty. And our names, once we do sign that affidavit, become an important part of the judicial system and of the judicial process, and we must be prepared to sit in front of a judge on any given case, on any given serve we have worked, and be able to be accountable for all our actions. We have to make sure that we have done our jobs in a professional and respectful and legal manner at all times. Not having a strong set of ethical guidelines and procedures is very dangerous to your company, to yourself personally, and to your employees, and even to your clients. Serving papers is not the same exact situation every time. We run into all kinds of individuals, clients, and scenarios. And sometimes there's not often a very clear answer to a dilemma that you may be facing. But by practicing high ethical standards and gaining confidence through making those right decisions, being a process server with dignity and honesty and being honest and having strong principles will be very easy.
So, I mean, it's no secret that in process serving you're dealing with folks who themselves may be in the position that they're in because of a lapse in ethics, or perhaps they're not being ethical as you're trying to do your job. They're hiding, being combative, or worse. Hopefully that's not the case, but should that ever give anyone license to flex on their principles as a process server?
Absolutely not. And this is when you really need to stay strong and hold on to your values and make sure you as the server are doing the right thing at all times. It is your name and your company that is the one serving that paper, and being professional and respectful at all times should never be questioned or should never become lax in any way.
Makes sense. So as you mentioned before, you teach classes on ethics. What are some of the guiding principles that you cover, and how do those tend to translate into the business of process serving?
There are 6 principles that I have found to be very useful and help form the basis of business ethics. And these consist of honesty, integrity, obeying the law, respect, excellence, and accountability. And if you take these 6 principles and you implement them into your business as well as into your personal life and your everyday business, being ethical and doing the right thing shouldn't be a challenge. It should just be very easy and help you get through any situation. The first one, honesty. That seems like pretty much a no-brainer. And you're going to have to be honest with yourself and everyone involved at all times. That's a must. Remember, we work in an industry in which we may testify in court on any paper, on any attempt that we may do at any time. And being dishonest can land you in a world of trouble, or in court, or even in jail. Integrity. Integrity is how you gain the trust from anyone you encounter. And you gain trust by doing the right thing in all situations. And integrity is also having the courage to do the right thing. Sometimes it's not easy, but you've got to think about the situation you're in and, make sure you're doing the right thing. Obeying the law. This too is a must and should be a no-brainer. I mean, it's just common sense, but we all know that there are companies out there that will push the limits, and even legal ones, to get the serve done or make some money, or if they're dealing with competitors or other aspects of their job. We are not immune to the laws just because we are serving papers. We have got to follow the law at all times.
Seems like that one should be a priority.
Yes, all times. Respect. Respect is one principle I see lacking, not just in our industry, but with a lot of professionals and individuals. Do unto others as you would have done unto them, or do unto others as you would have done unto you seems to be a totally forgotten concept. Respect should be given because everyone deserves fair and equal treatment. Role-playing is a good tool to utilize when it comes to respecting others. Think of the person that you are dealing with, either it be a client or an attorney, a paralegal, a business owner, a process server, the person you're serving, or even the resident of the home, as someone in your family. Think of them as your mother or your father or your spouse, son, daughter, or whoever. How would you want them to be treated if they were being served? If someone was at their door serving them papers, what kind of tone of voice would you want them to use? What kind of words would you want them to say? What would you want their behavior to be like? Would you want them to be defensive? Would you want to be polite? You would want them to be treated with the utmost respect at all times, in order to get that paper served. And this is in turn how you should turn around and treat others and the ones that you're serving. Excellence. I think this principle is the quickest one, if it is lacking, that can destroy a process serving company instantly. And if you fail to give excellent customer service to your clients, it's going to be very hard to stay in business. Most process serving companies talk to other process serving companies, and many of us share the same attorney clients and other company clients. We belong to the same associations, and by not providing the quality service, news gets around and people talk. Providing excellence in every step in serving a paper just makes good business sense. If the client should be confident that they have hired the best person for that serve, and you should feel that you did an excellent job for them from the very beginning and all the way to the end. And the last one is accountability. We live in a time where it's normal to blame others for anything and everything, to point fingers and to make excuses and, go the easy route and sweep things under the rug. And, we have to be responsible for our own actions. And, responsibility seems to be a disappearing act. It's, nobody wants to be responsible for themselves anymore. They just want to blame everybody else. And being ethical means holding yourself and your business accountable and responsible for each and every single action. It means owning up to a mistake. It means being honest and standing by your actions and keeping your word and promises. If you quote a client to do, let's say, 6 attempts in 7 days, then you better be doing those 6 attempts in 7 days. Follow through. Be accountable for your words. Those are the 6 basic principles that should be incorporated into your daily work routine. They're a good, solid foundation for a successful business, and they protect you from doing wrong things, and they'll impress the ones that you do work with, and help you when you choose to do the right things and make good ethical decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you said, most of those are really kind of common sense, but I think we can see how easy it is in some of the scenarios that process servers come across to be emotional and reactive in situations, and I guess that's maybe one thing too. How do you keep your emotions at bay, and how do you mitigate being reactive if you have someone on the other end of a serve who is causing you problems or is not using those same kind of instincts, and so yeah, I think definitely good summary there of things we should be thinking about. So I guess in leading up to today, talking to you about this presentation, it seems that you get asked the question quite a bit, what would you have done in this scenario? It's a question that you can't always answer without having been there, being in the shoes of the process server. But what are some common scenarios that you're asked about or that you've experienced, and what do you want process servers to consider in these scenarios?
I have a list of various dilemmas and scenarios that I have either experienced myself or received phone calls of, or met with other servers and we've talked about it. And I like presenting the scenarios because, again, I like to make people think. And I want the process server to think about how they would handle each of these situations and what steps they would take in making the right decisions. We're going to talk about a few of the scenarios. The first one would be, working with clients. One of the scenarios that I've been called with several times is a client calls to cancel a serve, and you are 1 minute away from the address where you will be attempting. And what do? Do you still charge? Do you discount? Or do you not charge at all? What is the right decision to make there? Another scenario with clients is a client prepays for a serve. They send you the documents with a check, and then 2 weeks later, you receive a check for that same serve. What do you do with that check? Do you send it back? Do you cash it? You've got to make that right decision what to do. A client emails you over documents, and once you print them, you notice that the documents can't be read for whatever reason. They may be blurry, they may be too light, the font is really small, which often happens when scanning something, and the client says, that's the only copy. We need to have this served. Serve it anyway. What would you do? Is it fair to serve somebody something they can't read, but the client wants you to serve it? How would you handle that situation? Another scenario that's quite popular is you receive a paper for a business that you have attempted before, and it's a bad address. That business closed down years ago. Do you physically go back to that address or fill out an affidavit based on what you know? How do you handle that? What's the best decision, in that scenario? Another one, a new client calls and wants you to email you documents to serve along with a copy of a check. And I get this a lot in various ways. And you get that serve done, and a week later, there's still no check that has arrived in the mail. And do you hold that affidavit until payment arrives? Some servers say, I heard them say, no, I'm not releasing that affidavit until I get paid. Is that, again, the best decision? And working with attorneys, charging higher fees to attorneys than you would for others. Is this fair? Is this ethical? I heard some servers say they certainly do. Some say absolutely not. How would you handle that in which you feel comfortable with? Attorney wants you to serve a paper on the last day possible to give the recipient very little time to prepare or respond. And they are very clear about their intentions. Do you serve it? Is that being fair to everybody? They're, kind of working the system a little bit. And, what would you do? What would you say to the attorney? How would you handle that serve? An attorney wants you to serve a paper to Mr. Smith at 456 Happy Lane. You attempt and was told he does not live there, and the client does not have a description. And we get this a lot. The attorney says, I don't care. That's him. You're wrong. Go back. Serve him. Serve anyone that's there. Serve anyone who answers the door. How do you handle that? You got to think about what you as a process server are going to do in that situation and how you're going to figure out what to do to come with the best possible solution.
Right. And what do you do on the affidavit there?
Exactly.
That's a challenge on that scenario for sure. So. On our end, quite often we hear from servers that they're going to charge more to a pro se or a private party than they would law firms or attorneys, and their theory is that they're not going to be a repeat customer. They're not going to continue to bring them business. This is a one-time thing. They'll probably need a lot more in the way of updates, phone calls, questions being answered, a lot more hand-holding along the way. Is this the type of scenario that you think falls under these dilemmas or scenarios?
I think this can be applied to any client, not just like the private parties. Some serves, even from another process serving company, may require that little extra work or a little extra hand-holding. Inquire some internet searches, looking up the property records and stuff like that. And I feel you have to be fair across the board. If one job requires more work than another, certainly base your fees on that. Don't base your fees on who the client is. Base it on the work that you provide. I think that's probably, a good business decision there. And that brings us to the scenarios of serving individuals and business. And one of the ones that, I hear servers talk about a lot is you go to the door and they answer the door and they are very obviously intoxicated. You can ask them questions, they may not understand, they're slurring, it's very, very obvious. And do you go ahead and do that serve? Are they going to remember that the next day? And a lot of this scenario too is with mentally challenged or people suffering from dementia. I had a situation where a client wanted me to serve somebody who was actually in a hospice home given less than 24 hours to live. And he's like, go there and serve them. And I personally did not do it. That was something that I felt was just inappropriate and didn't think that I could live with doing that. So another one is wrong middle initial. You go there and you serve a paper and it has the wrong middle initial, but the client says, no, that's them. Serve them anyway. How do you make that into a good serve? How do you get good results for both the client and for getting that paper done? This one I had recently, the person that I was serving demanded to know who hired me. Do you tell them? What do you say? That's something that you've got to think about, maybe a possible scenario that you run into. Some other scenarios that could come up are, working with competitors and other servers. Let's say you receive a paper in the mail to serve, and the address on the field sheet is your address, and it's correct. But the 2 is maybe another server or a local competitor on the field sheet. And you don't remember getting a call about that serve. What do? Do you go ahead and serve it? Do you call the client and say, hey, was this meant for me? Do you call the other person on the name and say, hey, were you expecting this paper? What's the right thing to do? What is, a good business decision? A client calls and is upset they never received an affidavit or response to emails, and you ask about the serve and you find out it was sent to a competitor, and that you have heard, maybe through other clients or other servers, that they don't have the greatest reputation. They provide bad service. You inquire about the serve, and what do you tell the client? Do you try to get the business? Do you say, oh, you need to contact them, or do you say anything? Do you warn them about using this company? You got to think about, how is it going to affect them? How is it going to affect the other server? How is it going to reflect my reputation? A fellow process server tells you that 123 company owes them for several serves, and it has been months trying to collect payment with no results. And 123 company is a regular client of yours, and you've had no issue with getting payment. But then 123 company calls you to serve a paper and now wants to invoice them. What do? Do you base your judgment on 123 company on your history or from what the editor says? Are you worried about your payment? Think about how you would handle that situation. A fellow process server tells you that they are doing serves for 123 company by just making calls to determine correct addresses. And I have run into this situation before. But they don't ever physically attempt the address. They're only making calls. And they justify this by saying, 123 company doesn't pay enough. They pay too little. But you're a client of 123 company as well. Do you say anything? And if so, to whom? Somebody may not be doing something properly, and in the legal process, even something illegally, what do you do? What do you say? Or do you say anything at all? A process serving company calls to get an update on a paper that you totally forgot about for whatever reason. I think it probably happened to everybody at one point or another didn't check the P.O. box, or it was emailed and you missed the email for whatever reason. And it's been a week since they've sent you the paper and you don't have any attempts to tell them. What do you tell the client? Are you honest? Do you make excuses? Do you, say I never received the paper? Or, you give them the truth? Think about how you would handle that. Some other scenarios that I have been questioned about: your company receives a paper to serve and you send it out to server number 1. So you have a company and you use several different servers. Server number 1 attempts it twice, and maybe they get sick or go on vacation. So you finish out the job, you go and you attempt it 3 times. And, it turns into a non-serve, no one's there, you find out it's vacant for whatever reason. On that affidavit, who signs it? Or who puts down do you put all 5 attempts with the one server's name? Do you do 2 different affidavits? Do you have both people sign? If I list those 5 affidavits on there and I did the last 3 and I signed that, is that being truthful? Did I do those 5 attempts? So how would you handle that situation? And I've heard that come up quite a bit. Another scenario: you've had client 123 company for years, and another process server in your state sends you a paper in your area, and you notice that on the bottom of the affidavit, underneath where your sign, is the name of your client. You wonder why it was not sent to you directly. You don't have a problem with them. You thought you had a good relationship with them, but all of a sudden, they're sending papers to a server, let's say 4 hours away, and now they're feeling the work out to you. What do you say? Do you call the client? Is that ethically right to call the client of another process server? Do you say something to the other process serving company? Think about, what you would do in that situation. These are, just a few scenarios to think about. Some of them may be obviously right versus wrong. Some of them may not be. It may be, more difficult. There may not be a right or wrong answer. These just give you some things to think about. And if you're ever on, surveillance or wait time when you're serving paper, think about the scenarios and how you would handle it, and what steps you would take in order to get to the solution to it.
Those are great examples, and I think in this industry, when you're dealing with affidavits and you're dealing with forwarding and different layers of companies, the ethical component can pose a lot of additional challenges than some other industries out there. But even if our audience hasn't experienced some of those examples, I think it'll give them some food for thought there. Let's shift gears just a little bit. Let's talk about ethics before you're even hired by a company. We know that investigators and attorneys often have to abide by rules when they're marketing their businesses. How should a process serving firm incorporate ethics into their marketing communications, their websites, their branding, their advertisements?
Ethical marketing should always promote honesty, fairness, and responsibility. Marketing is targeted to large groups of people with different types of opinions on ideas of what is right, what is wrong, what is okay, and what is not. So, strategic marketing is very, very crucial. For example, there are process serving companies that advertise unlimited attempts. Well, to the client, that could mean 3 attempts a day for 4 weeks, 4 months, unlimited. I mean, there is no limit. They may think it includes other addresses, or work addresses, or if that one's vacant, they've got another one. This type of marketing also gives a negative impression about other process serving companies. They may state that they do 5, 8, 10 attempts or whatever, and when you're saying you're doing unlimited, you're kind of being negative towards other companies, and to me that's kind of misleading. There's also we serve any paper anywhere for $29.95. We've all seen those companies and seen that type of marketing. And again, this is very misleading. It can cause different impressions to different kind of clients. These are generally used, again, to create a negative impression about other companies. Saying we do more for less, or hire us because they only do this or that, and you can fill in the blank, whatever that is. That's not the image that you want to give your clients to form about your company. You should be focusing on, what you are providing. Don't be negative about somebody else. Be positive about yourself. If you take pride in saying that you do the first attempt in 24 hours on each and every paper, then market that and then stand by that and what service that your company provides. Let that be your advertising. Marketing should be about you and your company and your service and your ethical standards and what you'll be giving the client in exchange for them hiring you. You have to make sure too that whatever that your business actions match your marketing words. Again, honesty, being accountable for your own actions. And if you advertise, that first attempt within 24 hours on all papers, then you have to be responsible and you have to follow through and provide just that.
Yeah, again, really great examples, and I think examples that we see every day in this industry. If you spend any time looking at the websites and the marketing that a lot of the firms have built, and that just sounds like sound business advice for setting client expectations as much as ethics. Not only do you want to be ethical, but you don't want to make promises that are potentially going to drain your profit margins or cause any problems for your client base. So we're getting pretty close to wrapping it up. So again, if anyone out there has questions, feel free to ask those in the GoToWebinar question widget. But Kimberly, why don't you cover some of the tools that can help in making good ethical decisions when faced with these dilemmas before we wrap it up today?
There are a few simple steps that when you're faced with a dilemma that will, help you guide you to the right decision. The first one is stop and think. Very simple. Very rarely are ethical decisions a now or never situation. You have to decide right now what to do. You don't want to make any rash decisions, that come back later, harm you, the person you're serving, or jeopardize the serve, and or jeopardize your company later on. Clarify the good and the bad. Carefully weigh out, what good will come of this. So who is it going to help? How will I feel if the situation was reversed? Again, that role playing. What is the negative side if I choose this? Who is it going to harm? And what will that harm, be like for my company down the road? Think about the good and the bad, right versus wrong. Doing research, that is another great tool. Having adequate information is very important. Verify any information that you do get. Question and verify information given to you by your clients. I don't know how many times I've had an attorney tell me something, and they were quite convincing and 100% certain that they were right. But a little bit of research, I found that they were wrong. And had I not done that research, it could have jeopardized, the way the server was going or how, I was going to carry it out. Consider the consequences. First of all, is the decision legal? That should be first and foremost. Will it violate any of my own values or beliefs? Will it cause harm to others? Sit down and imagine that the decision's already done, that you've already chose to do this or not chose to do this and whatever. And, think about the results. Think about what's going to happen now and how everybody's going to feel and what the next steps would be. Another tool, phone a friend. Call a friend or a colleague you trust. And you maybe have an attorney friend or even someone else that owns a business. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a process serving company. Just get their view on it. You don't have to give them, names and details, but say, hey, I've got this situation. What's your point of view on it? Maybe even getting 2 or 3 point of views. Gathering information, from an outside point of view, can certainly help you make that decision. And one good tool is, and certainly shouldn't be forgotten, is to monitor. Monitor what happens after you make an ethical decision. Did you get the results you wanted? And if you did not get the results you wanted, you may want to go back and reevaluate and make a new decision. If the results are positive and good and everything came out, you got a happy client, you got the serve done, remember that. Remember that and use it in the future. It will help, the next time that you have a dilemma, and having confidence in serving and making a decision is very, very important. And this will give you confidence that you have done the right thing and made a strong ethical decision.
Awesome, Kimberly. Well, I think you've answered everyone's questions about ethics today, because I'm not seeing any questions come through. If they,
that's good or bad.
It's a good thing. If our audience has any questions for you, how can they reach you? Can they shoot you an email, give you a call?
Email is always the best. femaleagents@gmail.com. Certainly the best way. If you need to call, my phone number is on the website. You can find me on ServeNow. So, but yeah, I love to think. And if you got a scenario that you're pondering and not quite sure what to do about or how to handle a situation, call somebody. Get some other opinions. Reach out to others.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, Kimberly, thank you again for being here today and supporting the process serving industry and the ServeNowEDU initiative. I'd like to thank everyone in our audience for being here today. The notes and the video recording from today's webinar will be available on ServeNow.com probably tomorrow sometime, definitely by the beginning of next week. You'll also be emailed the link to the today's recording and the notes from today's webinar in the next couple business days as well. Remember to subscribe to ServeNowEDU on YouTube or iTunes. I hope everyone has a happy and safe 4th of July, and we will see you next month. So thank you all, and thank you again, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, too. Bye-bye.